Allen Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Scott Thompson.
So here we are again, waiting on the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration to step in and do something about rampant broker fraud throughout the industry. We were told action was coming, but now it appears the agency is kicking the can down the road once again. We'll get into that with Jay Grimes, OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, along with FMCSA's apparent speed limiter mistake, an automatic emergency braking update, and more in this week's installment of Regulatory Roundup. Then, semis weren't the only kind of trucks getting attention at the Guilty by Association Truck Show in Joplin, Missouri this past weekend. Monster trucks were turning heads as well. We speak with an over-the-road truck driver who recently made his dream of owning a monster truck a reality. And finally, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance just held its annual conference and exhibition. Louis Pugh and Doug Morris of OOIDA were there. They tell us what was discussed and what truckers should know. All of that and more coming right up. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Scott. 2 new sponsors have been added to the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. On Wednesday, Senator Richard Durbin signed on along with Senator Tammy Duckworth, both of Illinois. The bill would establish a competitive grant program for truck parking. The Senate bill now has 11 co-sponsors. The Truck Parking House bill also got an additional co-sponsor this week, with Representative Kathy Manning signing on. The House version now has 37 co-sponsors. Both bills have support from both sides of the aisle. In an effort to keep up with emerging technologies and reduce the average time it takes to complete investigations, the National Transportation Safety Board has increased hiring this year. According to a press release, the NTSB is on track to onboard 70 new employees this year. Last year, the NTSB hired 57 new employees, compared to 7 in 2017. NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy said the increase in staff allows an increase in the number of investigations in the Office of Rail, Pipeline, and Hazardous Materials by nearly 50%. Increased staffing also helped reduce the number of investigative reports, more than 2 years old, from 442 cases in February of 2022 to 0 by the end of this week. Usage of cell phones behind the wheel is linked to an increased number of fatalities in Missouri. The state's Department of Transportation said traffic fatalities have increased by 15% in the past 5 years. 93.9 The Eagle reports that texting while driving has been a topic this week at the Missouri Highway Safety and Traffic Conference in Columbia. More than 500 transportation professionals, law enforcement officers, and safety advocates were in attendance. MoDOT Director Patrick McKenna told the station that 34% of all serious injuries and crashes are caused by distracted driving. Another trucking company is going under. Elmer Bukta, based out of Indiana, has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It comes less than a year after the company was acquired by a private equity firm. Elmer Bukta Trucking was founded in 1938. According to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's SAFER website, the company has 100 drivers and more than 230 power units. Uber Freight and Waabi are teaming up for an autonomous trucking pilot route in Texas. It's part of a 10-year deal the companies had previously signed. Waabi's AI-powered trucks will use Uber Freight's network to make deliveries between Dallas and Houston. The plan is to expand hauls across Texas over the coming months and years. This is an expansion of Uber Freight's commitment to autonomous trucking in Texas. It also had a similar partnership with Aurora. The owner of a Missouri tow truck company is going to prison for tampering with diesel emission control devices. The U.S. Attorney's Office said Dennis Cleveland was sentenced last week to 2 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Cleveland pleaded guilty earlier this year to several charges related to violating the Clean Air Act. He admitted to telling Affordable Towing employees to physically disable emissions control components on multiple heavy-duty diesel tow trucks since 2011, sometimes called tuning or flashing. That allowed the company to save money on maintenance expenses and fuel. A co-conspirator also pleaded guilty to similar charges but has yet to be sentenced. AAA recently did research on the use of advanced driver assistance systems, dubbed ADAS for short. The study involved 30 drivers operating a vehicle with driver assistance features, including adaptive cruise control and lane-keeping assistance. According to a press release, the study participants drove the driver-assisted equipped vehicle for 6 to 8 weeks on highways and were assessed before, during, and after on their behavior and attitudes toward the driving assistance technology. Some of the key takeaways from the study were that drivers can become comfortable with driver assistance technology over time, but are less likely to use the technologies in high-demand situations. Drivers who use their vehicle's driver assistance systems reported lower stress levels and greater driving enjoyment. AAA said over the course of the study, there was an increase in the frequency of system warnings reminding drivers to pay attention, which suggests drivers become more comfortable engaging in non-driving activities as they become more familiar with advanced driver assistance systems. The American Transportation Research Institute is doing research on the challenges facing female truck drivers, as well as barriers that discourage women from considering a career in trucking. ATRI said the comprehensive study will also identify strategies for overcoming industry issues faced by women. Previous ATRI research has confirmed that women make up 8.1% of all U.S. truck drivers and only 2.7% of over-the-road truck drivers. Key components of the research will include national surveys and focus groups with women who are veteran truck drivers, new entrants, or former truck drivers. ATRI will also look at certain fleets that have more female drivers and will collaborate with truck driving training schools to identify recruitment and training issues unique to women. Pennsylvania's Department of Transportation is asking for input. PennDOT requests feedback on its construction and summer maintenance season so it can identify strengths and opportunities. According to a press release, in 2023, 161 state and local bridges have been repaired, replaced, or preserved. More than 3,100 roadway miles have been improved, including more than 1,000 miles of paving. To take the survey, you can visit surveymonkey.com/r/2023 PD construction. A truck driver was fined after a $30 million helicopter he was transporting got hung up under a bridge in Louisiana. WBRZ reports that the truck got stuck on Range Avenue in Denham Springs after the top of the aircraft inadvertently rammed an I-12 overpass. The city's police department issued a fine to the driver for careless operation. And finally, police in Washington state got a bit of a scare when they pulled over a driver in the carpool lane. UPI reports that the driver got creative before making his trip in the high-occupancy vehicle lane by attaching a Halloween mask on the passenger seat, along with a scarf and vest. Washington State Patrol posted that it was scary, but still didn't count. The driver was cited for an HOV violation. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. We're not far away from our annual Truckers for Troops telethon, but you don't have to wait to make a difference. You can make a donation all year round through the OOIDA website. The Truckers for Troops program sends care packages to U.S. troops overseas and supports efforts here at home through the Veterans Community Project. Just go to the main menu at the upper left corner of OOIDA.com, then under Membership, click on Truckers for Troops. If you'd like to join OOIDA, you can do it at a discount. Just call the membership department during business hours at 816-229-5791. You can join the association or renew your membership for 2 years for $50. That's a $40 discount. Coming up next, FMCSA's new timeline for tackling broker fraud is going to disappoint a lot of folks. All the details on that and more up next right here on Landline Now, so please do stick around. Lots more show to come.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. More miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Loadboard Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Loadboard Pro.
Welcome back to the show. We had a few significant stories break this week, courtesy of the USDOT September Significant Rulemaking Report, which was maybe as notable for what we didn't learn from it. This topic is right up our next guest's alley, the man who lives, eats, and breathes regulatory matters. It's OIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, how you doing?
Doing all right, hanging in there after a sort of wild and tumultuous week on the regulatory side, to say the least.
Yeah, maybe you live these matters. You haven't necessarily been sleeping maybe as much this week because it's been an interesting week and it's been a bit confusing, to be honest here. I know we've talked about this on the show already earlier in the week, but we have to start with the whole speed limiter mandate confusion here. On Monday, we thought FMCSA finally announced the speed they wanted to cap heavy trucks at, that being 68 miles an hour. But then, as we have pointed out a few times here, hours later, they said they had made a mistake and retracted that announcement. You know this process better, really, than anybody out there, I think, and it seems like they missed a few steps here or there at FMCSA. I'm going to ask you straight up here at the start, what happened?
Yeah, if you're being really cynical, the initial language they put out on Monday morning with the 68 mile an hour speed sort of read like a final rulemaking to me. And then the kind of reversal, of course, later in the afternoon with more vague language read more like what we're expecting the next step to be in terms of a notice of proposed rulemaking. So it's kind of one way to look at it. Another way to maybe speculate at it, there's a lot of bureaucratic red tape that goes through this. A lot of different agencies certainly potentially involved here. Did they just miss something along the way and it was truly an honest mistake? Not too sure, and we haven't really heard any great clarification yet from the agency. So a lot of confusion, a lot of fingers I'm sure are being pointed maybe behind closed doors over at DOT and FMCSA. We're trying to interpret it as much as we can, really trying to open up all avenues to see how this could impact a final rulemaking, because certainly if it's that first option I mentioned, that really violates a lot of potential rulemaking procedures that the agencies have to follow as they promulgate these significant and obviously very important rules, especially on something this big of an issue.
Yeah, I suspect we'll never fully know exactly what happened here, but we are moving down the line here. I mean, the regulatory process continues, and what we do know from what we learned this week is that December 29th, we are going to get a supplemental notice of proposed rulemaking, I believe. This, again, even if all the steps are taken properly, it does continue to be confusing, I think, for a lot of people out there. Walk us through what does happen next. December 29th is the next date we're looking at here, and then kind of what happens after that. This is a long process.
Yeah, and it's going to be a little convoluted based on the comments that we heard this week. So they've put out this target date of December 29th, but also in kind of their retraction issued on Monday, they said that the proposed rulemaking still has to get clearance from the Office of Management and Budget. Again, a typical regulatory process on some of these larger rulemakings. The caveat to that is that OMB generally will take at least a few months to review the proposal from the agency before kind of giving their sign off and before it can be published in the Federal Register. And we haven't seen that FMCSA has submitted the next supplemental notice of proposed rulemaking to the Office of Management and Budget quite yet. So September 28th right now, OMB still hasn't formally received the document. When you look back on all the previous rulemakings that they've done, again, the slow wheels in Washington, 3 months would be a quick turnaround, and that's right exactly at December 29th. So unless this is a very fast-tracked process at OMB with this rulemaking, December 29th is going to be a potentially tough date to hit in their projections. You look back, 8 years ago now, at the initial notice of proposed rulemaking with FMCSA and NHTSA back then, that OMB review, what was the exact, a year or so over at OMB before it got approval there. Okay, maybe this time around, since they already did somewhat similar process 8 years ago, maybe it can go a little quicker, but still to get it out speedy is asking a lot. So we're kind of
no pun intended. Yeah,
exactly.
So, I mean, if it does follow that timeline, December 29th, if that date holds, are we going to learn what the speed limit proposal actually is, an actual number? I mean, are we going to find out that, or do we even know that?
Based on the updated language that we've received, my guess is that we're not going to have a specific number. Potentially, we will get a couple options that they put out there. I think we would get some more technical details on what they're considering. 68 certainly seems likely that's going to be an option. The rulemaking back in 2016 certainly had 60 and 65 as options as well. Also might get some more information about what model year a mandate could potentially apply to. If it's going to be just the model year of the truck, is it going to be the model year of the engine of the truck? So we should find out more information, but based on what we've heard so far, you never really know.
Yeah, I think that is a very safe thing to say there, Jay. Let's move on to another issue mentioned in that rulemaking report, broker transparency. We thought FMCSA was going to take action on this issue earlier this year, or, I guess any day now, but that timeline does appear to be much longer now. What did we learn?
Yeah, so we learned that the notice of proposed rulemaking looking to improve broker transparency regulations, something that we've been working on for decades now, formally petitioned the agency back in 2020. It's not expected now until October 31st of 2024. And this is one that I had to do a double take on when I saw the new date. I just thought it would be October 31st of this year based on quite a few comments that we've heard from the agency since in March of this year they announced that they were going to move forward with this rulemaking and not officially granting our petition, but certainly moving forward with it. And at the same time, they actually did formally deny a petition from the Transportation Intermediaries Association to outright eliminate the broker transparency regulations in 371.3. Shortly after we heard this announcement, the agency was down at the Mid-American Trucking Show in Louisville at end of March, early April, and they said, you're going to hear more specifics about the timeline and the upcoming regulatory agenda that's released every spring. A few weeks later, that regulatory agenda came out, indicated June of 2023. We've heard from the administrator and other officials at FMCSA saying, yeah, this is a priority for us, and we're going to do our best to get it out as soon as possible. Then again, this week, the indications are that might not be the case, and we're going to be waiting for another year at least if they're able to hit this projected time frame. So certainly I think flies in the face of a lot of what they've said throughout this year, and certainly sort of ignores the fact of the continued increase in broker fraud, double brokering, and these other broker-related issues that are really plaguing the industry right now due to the lack of oversight from FMCSA and DOT that's really allowing and in a lot of ways encouraging some of these unscrupulous entities to kind of continue to take advantage of motor carriers and drivers when it comes to freight.
Yeah, this timeline really does kind of stand out when you take into account other things that have been pushed onto the fast track, right? Broker transparency, we've been talking about this for, it seems like forever. As you mentioned there, we've been promised that action is coming soon, and it's been pushed back and obviously looks like on the back burner right now. On the opposite side of things here, this automatic emergency braking system mandate proposal really does seem like it's on the fast track now. In this report that we got this week, the final rule now listed for April 30th of 2024, and that really is a fast track that we're looking at there.
Yeah, and kind of just real quick, I can kind of compare these two timelines. We filed a petition, would have been May 2020 on broker transparency. We went through a couple different petition rulemaking public comment periods. There was a separate listening session that FMCSA had. They had the listening session down at Matt's this year, in addition to some separate broker-related rulemakings that they're working on. There's quite an abundance of public comments and material that FMCSA can work on to produce a meaningful and substantive proposed rulemaking when it comes to broker transparency. They're pushing that back. Now you've got this automatic emergency braking rule. Understand it was mandated by Congress November 2021, so long after our petition was filed. And then even after Matt's of this year, they put out the notice of proposed rulemaking. That comment period just ended in September. That proposal, we don't think went through the proper channels and proper research needed to kind of come up with a rulemaking that would address a lot of the concerns we hear on AEBs, most notably false activations going off, really taking control out of a driver's hands. And now, even with those concerns, with all the comments that were filed on that AEB rulemaking, they're coming back and putting that final rule long before they're going to even put out a proposed rule on broker transparency. So raises a lot of questions, can kind of read through the lines and really determine maybe what some of the priorities are over at FMCSA right now, which are in big contrast to what a lot of the priorities are for drivers out there. Most notably, we hear day in and day out right now, broker transparency is among those top priorities. Certainly pushing back against speed limiters is one as well. And just, really an unfortunate example of DOT, FMCSA not really valuing the input of the driver community. We're really pushing back again this week. I think OIDA President Todd Spencer put it best in this broker transparency thing.
Yeah.
That it's just a load of BS. And I think that hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, it certainly is frustrating. And I think you summed it up perfectly there. It really does show what the priorities there, it seems to be at FMCSA based on all the information that we're getting there. One more thing here real quick, Jay. I just wanted to mention this. It may have fallen through the cracks in this report because we had so much information there. It's an important one, though, that being the new entrant safety assurance process. We're going to be hearing more about this next summer. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this was another one that came up in that spring unified regulatory agenda. Really, on the heels last couple of years, we've seen a huge increase in the number of new carrier registrations, new entries into the industry. Wanting to make sure that those people entering are operating safely, FMCSA announced they were going to kind of reopen this examination of new entrants exams and audits. And we were anticipating that would be coming up sometime before the end of the year. Now, in this latest rulemaking, doesn't sound like it's going to be until next year. So, kind of another delay in a potentially important, not necessarily rulemaking here, but something to make sure that we have new drivers entering safely.
Jay, to say you've been busy this week, I think would be an understatement. So we appreciate you coming by, updating us, and keeping us, again, up to date on what's going on out there. And we know we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good.
That was Jay Grimes of OIDA's Washington, D.C. office. If you want to stay up to date on everything they're fighting for and fighting against, check out fightingfortruckers.com, where you can get involved in the fight yourself. Stick around. Landline Now is back right after this.
Can't miss accuracy, weigh your truck on a CAT scale.
When you weigh on a CAT scale, you get a no excuses guarantee. You can now save time weighing by using your smartphone. Find out more at weightmytruck.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Semi-trucks weren't the only trucks at the Guilty by Association Truck Show. Monster trucks were a main attraction for many attending the show. Brandon Swick drives truck over the road and recently started driving monster trucks. I spoke with him at GBATS.
And talk to me about your truck driver. What do you haul?
So we've hauled everything from cattle, grain, a lot of flatbed and stuff, all 48 states, fully apportioned, owner-operators. And we do a lot of local hauling stuff with asphalt and gravel as well. I grew up ranching. My parents were high school sweethearts, and they drove truck right out of high school. Not sure if I was conceived in a truck or not, but first 2 years of my life, I rode coast to coast with them. Then when they had my younger sister, they went into ranching. And so I grew up ranching and learned how to drive tractor trailer when I was 13. Got my CDL when I was 18 with my father and I's father-son project, 1972 A model Kenworth, no power steering. So I took my CDL test with that and kind of went into construction and got my parents out of ranching, and everything's came full circle and we're back into trucking together. So I had a 2005 work and show truck, flat top Peterbilt, and that I worked on fixing up for 6 years. And last year trucks are worth a insane amount of money, and I literally had a dream about doing monster trucks. I didn't know a single person in it. I knew absolutely nothing about it. I've been a gearhead my whole life with diesel performance and racing motocross all through middle school, high school. And I had a dream about doing it. I woke up, told my parents, I said, I think I'm gonna buy a monster truck. And of course everybody thought I'd lost my mind. I sold my flat top last year for a big chunk of money, and went out and bought a monster truck. And it's a super small community, so nobody really gets into this without everybody else knowing it. And so as strange as it is, I thought I was going to be the only person in Wyoming with a monster truck. And turns out there was two twin brothers that had been in the business for like 13 years prior to that. And they had moved to Laramie 2 years before I bought my monster truck. And I bought mine out of Washington. And the guy used to be neighbors with the twin brothers. And so he said, there's two twin brothers in your hometown that do monster trucks. I said, no way. And, long story short, I can actually see their house from my front porch, but I never knew it. They got me hooked up with my first shows, and it just spread like wildfire. I had 16 weekends for shows last year, and now I'm at 45 weekends this year. So it's full-time monster truck stuff. But when I'm home during the week, if I have a short weekend, then I'll go home and I'll drive truck and haul asphalt and gravel and stuff during the week. So I work about 7 days a week, 20 hours a day. Just living the dream. So
What was it like? I mean, you've driven truck pretty much all your life. Getting in the monster truck for the first time and driving it, what was that like?
It was crazy. So I grew up, ranching and running big equipment and doing construction and all that stuff. It's totally crazy. Like it's unlike anything else, anybody has ever experienced before. And, even jumping like four-wheelers or side-by-sides, it's kind of a crazy feeling because, there's pretty serious consequences if you do even a fairly minimal jump. And then when you hop in something like this, your butt is 8 feet off the ground just sitting there. And so when you go and put yourself another 20, 30 feet in the air, it's pretty crazy. So basically you just have to get to where you trust your equipment, and you know what the truck can handle and how it's going to react. And after you accomplish that, then, sky's the limit.
Is it a big adrenaline rush when you're out there doing it?
At first it was a big adrenaline rush, and now it's just more of a challenge, to challenge myself to drive better, do better tricks, and put on a better show each and every time, I get in the truck. So
What's it like? I assume when you're actually, driving, you're focused, but when you look out in the crowd and see, the kids, the big kids and the little kids watching you, and I mean, this must just be the coolest thing for them.
It really is, and it's cool because, I used to be right there. I actually never went to a monster truck show at all when I was a kid. I actually took my parents for the first time that they'd ever seen a monster truck show just a couple months prior to me buying one. And I told them we were sitting up there in the grandstands, and I told them, I said, I want to be down there, And so to make it happen, and like I say, I tell people that all the time too, is I didn't come from any amount of money. My parents aren't wealthy. My grandparents didn't die and leave me money. I came from a working background, and it's all about integrity and working hard and having a dream. And, so anybody can do it. That's my story, is that if you have a dream and you dream it long enough and target everything you do towards that, sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want.
Oh yeah, how did you take the tires off to get the truck and the trailer?
Yeah, we get asked that a lot. So we take the big tires off. We have small tires over there. We call them toter tires. Okay. Then we can put them inside of for the most part, we use a 53-foot, 102 Kentucky-style dry van trailer. So with my big tractor with this 120-inch ARI sleeper, 326 wheelbase, of course I've got a full onboard generator and, shower, bathroom, all that stuff. But with one monster truck in the trailer, our fuel, our tools, all of our spare parts, I'm about $70,000 with just one truck. Monster truck with the big tires on, it's about 12,000 pounds.
Kenny Eggleston was the host for the Monster Truck Insanity Tour. He said the tour group is based in Idaho and Arkansas, but does shows all over the country.
And for those who have never experienced this, kind of describe to me what it's like.
Well, we've got 15,000 pound or 1,500 horsepower trucks. They weigh about 10,000 pounds, and they're going to fly through the air with the greatest of ease, doing some really technical jumps and things like that. We're just super excited to be a part of it here.
My question when I'm watching it, how do they not flip over? Or what if they do flip over?
Sometimes they do, and we're pretty well trained. You can see we've got a loader on standby here. I realize you can't see it, but we do have a loader on standby here, and they have anchor points on them where we can roll them back over. So, yeah, it's a lot of safety involved in it, a lot of fuel shutoffs and things of that nature that we do to prevent any major incidents from happening. But believe it or not, they are made to tip over, and if one does go over, we usually get it right back on its feet and fire it up and turn it loose again.
So there's a little bit of a science behind it. They're not just driving around and going up on jumps for fun, right?
Absolutely. They some of it is all out, some of them is big air jumps, but like I say, a lot of them will do some technical tricks, like they call it a moonwalk or a stoppie, where they'll put it up on its front tires, and bicycles, which is up on two tires like the Dukes of Hazzard used to do. And you're probably not old enough to remember what the Dukes of Hazzard is, but stuff like that. All kind. It's really amazing how nimble these trucks are and how these drivers are able to safely execute these tricks. So.
And of course, this morning there were a lot of kids out here, and I mean, these kids must just look at you guys and think you're living the dream.
It's pretty awesome, but the cool part about it is we're the biggest kids. So we just found a way to actually get the toys, and pretty much every single one of these drivers grew up watching that and being one of those kids and one of those fans. And so as far as the Monster Truck Insanity Tour goes, we try to captivate that experience as much and give as much exposure to these kids from our drivers and really bring them into the show.
You've driven a monster truck, I assume?
No. Yeah, okay. Yes and no. Yes, they let me drive it into the pits, but I talk much better than I drive. So as of right now, I'm mostly running a microphone instead of a truck.
All right. But it must be, I assume, a thrill when you're up in these trucks and doing all these things.
I think I get more excited than they do, absolutely, from the outside looking in and watching what they're doing and seeing what they do, and then again, the look on the kids' faces, and again, the big kids too. Like we kind of all grew up doing that. I'm 51 years old, and those are the biggest kids that sometimes we have to tell the wives, hey, make sure your husband doesn't get too close to the fence. I know he's excited. I know he's excitable, but yeah, we need to have safety here. So
that's awesome. All right. Anything else?
We're just super grateful to be here, a part of everything, and I want to throw out a great big thank you to Coltrane Energy for making it possible to bring the Monster Truck Insanity Tour to the show. It's a life's dream for me. So
I'm curious, how much time and mechanics goes into building these monster trucks? Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes on average to weld a frame together, and so I'm just talking the frame before you start putting all the other parts in it. A very skilled team can weld one together in about 7 days time, 7 work days. And it's very technical stuff, but on average, these guys will spend a year, 2 years building them, getting them ready to go, and they can be upwards of $250,000 by the time they even get them out. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. If you see one of them break a shock out here, that's like $10,000. So the tires are a little bit ridiculous and stuff, but it's definitely a love of passion. So, but yeah, very expensive and very, very dialed in. And then you can build a monster truck, but knowing all the physics and how to drive it and how it's going to react and balance and all of that kind of stuff, very scientific, very technical.
Talk to me, about the track and how it's all laid out.
Well, we plan it out, and we've just recently started using actually some 3D software to design our track and lay it out. But a lot of times we'll take Google Maps when we know the area that we're going into and start designing what kind of obstacles we want to do. They all kind of have a name. That one over there is called a jammer. And then sometimes we don't even use crush cars anymore because the drivers can do it, but we'll utilize concrete K-rails is what they call them, the highway barriers. And that is a specific obstacle that they can either get a good flat landing so that they can do a slap wheelie, or one of those stoppies that I was talking about where they put the nose literally almost touch it to the ground and kind of walk it back and forth before they set it back down. But yeah, it takes, we got this one pretty well knocked out yesterday, but it took kind of at least an 8-hour day, and it depends on the size of the floor, which is what we call the area that we're working in. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of thought goes into it before we just start laying stuff out there, because safety is always a concern when we're putting that stuff together, and so we have to look at that, and everything is very directional if you look at it, so we make sure that we're not sending a truck full tilt in the direction of the crowd or anything. So.
And you mentioned the safety aspect. I mean, when you're standing here, you're like, oh gosh, this looks so dangerous. But it sounds like it's actually quite safe. A lot of safety measures are put in place.
Yeah, it has to be, and the technology's come a long way. One of the most dangerous things used to be with a wheel coming off or something to that effect, and we've got safety tethers on them that at least prevents them from leaving the truck or slowing it down. Some of them are designed to a point now where it's almost impossible for a wheel to come off. But probably the most impressive one, and we'll talk about it a little bit for the afternoon session, is the RII. It's called a remote ignition interrupter. So we'll have 3 of those radios around the track. If one of our officials sees something they don't like, with a push of a button, they can shut down not only one truck, but every truck through a radio frequency. And they'll be able to shut those down. But yeah, there's a ton of safety. The trucks get teched every time we have a full sheet that we go around. We inspect their safety and all the little things that they have to have. I could go on, but it would take a whole episode to be able to talk about all that stuff. But yeah, safety is definitely critical because, again, they are 10,000 pounds. They're 1,500 horsepower, and we're sending them 30 feet in the air. So yeah, it's a lot goes into the safety.
Talk to me about the drivers.
Okay, so we've got a very well-known driver. Him and his brother, they're Double Action Motorsports, and his name is Aaron Basil. His brother Darren is driving for another team, but they've driven for all of the biggest teams. They've worked for the biggest industries out there, and now they have started. They're working on their second truck, so they will be an independent 2-team monster truck driving bunch, and any monster truck fans are going to know those fabulous Basil boys. They're pretty incredible, but twin brothers. And so Aaron's driving Devastator here, which is a legendary monster truck that if you're a fan, you know which truck it is. And then we have Josh Bungardner that is driving the Boss here, which is CMR, which is another one of our brands that you can actually come learn how to drive a monster truck. So it's a corporate motorsports retreat. And he comes from Litchfield, Minnesota. And then we have the new kid on the block, Brandon Swick, in the Geronimo monster truck, who is actually an over-the-road truck driver. That's his day job, and then he comes and drives monster trucks. But he's in his second season, and he's from Laramie, Wyoming, and just an incredible driver. We're super excited to have him. He's made quite a splash.
Do you think the over-the-road trucking gives him a bit of an advantage, maybe?
You know what? Most of these drivers that have been in the sport for more than 10 years, that's basically what their job is, because they're going crisscrossing the country. So, and obviously they're driving commercial standard vehicles. They're pretty much private, but they're basically the same thing. So, yeah, a little bit. They all pretty much get a lot of windshield time getting from place to place to go play with their monster trucks for a few minutes at a time.
Probably not as exciting as being out on this
It
kind of
might
track.
not be. And we always hope that they remember which one they're driving when they're driving it.
Yes,
So
that would be good.
That was Kenny Eggleston talking about the monster trucks at GBATS. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now, welcome back. OOIDA's Executive Vice President Louis Pugh joins me in studio, and Director of Security Operations Doug Morris joins me on the phone from Washington, D.C. Thank you for speaking with me, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Now, you two just attended the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance's annual conference. Louis, I'll start with you. How did things go? What were some of the main things discussed?
I think it went as well as it can go. I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, it's important that OIDA is there to represent small business trucking. We are really the only people there, if not the only people there representing small business trucking. Big fleets, they have a pretty good presence there. And, of course, law enforcement has a huge presence there. But I sit on the vehicle committee. They brought up a few just random things. Most of the stuff that they brought up actually didn't really go anywhere, so sometimes that's a good thing, that we really didn't do anything, or they kicked the can farther down the road. Really, the only, there's some lighting discussion. Big thing they're talking about now are improper or lights, because I guess there's been some companies out there that's been producing some truck bodies where the tail lights and stuff aren't at the right height. And then, of course, there's huge concern with guys who have lights that change colors and they're not the red or the amber or the clear, like where they're supposed to be. And there was a lot of talk about that. So nothing was settled, but I would throw out there, if you have lights that can change colors and stuff, that when you're operating up and down the highway, you should have them at the DOT legal color, because they are looking for you.
Doug, what were some of the takeaways that you had from the event?
Yeah, so two big things I saw there. That it was in the driver traffic committee. We had both large carriers and some law enforcement basically saying that a lot of the small business carriers out there are misusing the personal conveyance. CVSA petitioned FMCSA previously and asked them to put a mileage on personal conveyance, much like Canada has. And FMCSA denied that petition. We talked to FMCSA numerous times about the issue, saying basically, hey, personal conveyance is just that, personal conveyance. You can't put a mileage on it, because that is my personal conveyance. I can drive it as many miles as I want. And FMCSA took that advice from us, and now FMCSA put it back in the laps of CVSA, saying, hey, if they're using personal conveyance illegally, and please come up with some information on that. So they did a survey, and their survey, they're saying that probably 40% of the personal conveyance use out there is not within guidelines, and they want a mileage put on it. I don't think FMCSA will put a mileage on it, but you never know. They're going to probably refile a petition and try to get a personal conveyance mileage on there. The second thing was we were talking about ELDs, remanufactured motors, and it's pertain to Detroit diesel motors. Apparently there's a lot of confusion out in the field for law enforcement officers. There's a lot of rebuilt motors out there, remanufactured motors, and putting glider kits, and basically law enforcement some areas are letting them go. The driver says, hey, listen, it's a pre-2000 motor. I don't need an ELD. And in some cases, the officer is opening up the hood of the truck, and if the motor is remanufactured and has a EPA label stating the remanufacturer is up to EPA guidelines of whatever date that is. If the EPA guideline date is over 2000, they're saying that truck has to have an ELD. So you'll probably see some guidance go out from CVSA to all law enforcement agencies saying if it's a Detroit diesel remanufactured and then has an EPA label on it saying it's up to a certain year, whatever year after 2000, that truck will be required to have an electronic logging device.
Now, Louis, when it comes to kind of the people at the table making these decisions, assuming not many of them have experience driving a truck, what is your kind of goal as someone who does have experience to, communicate with them, and what were some of the things that were brought up?
Yeah, you're correct. Most of them, I think you're being very generous when you say not a lot. There are some that have none. The majority, like I said, it's mainly made up of law enforcement who usually have none, and even the industry people usually have none. So, yeah, I mean, for me personally, I try to use my experience. One of the things I sit on vehicle and just to share my experience. If I see something that comes out, to point out, hey, you can't do this. There was a thing brought up about not DOTing you during unloading, loading, or doing a service if you're legally parked. And which I love the idea that, and it unfortunately didn't pass. But the one thing I did bring up is you can't have the word legally parked, because as somebody who pulled a flatbed for years and years, there was lots of times I was loading construction equipment or, stuff for a job site or something, and you're on the roadside, on a bridge, you just never out in the street, so you weren't technically legally parked. So, but unfortunately, they can still DOT you if they want in those kind of situations. That didn't get passed, which was sad, but unfortunately, so. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. Because unfortunately, what happens is an enforcement officer or industry person, or somebody out on the roadside or somewhere sees something, or they want some more guidance, so they send an action item in for these committees to look at and to tell them how they're supposed to do it. And unfortunately, if you don't have working knowledge of certain things, yeah, it sounds like a great idea in the front, but then you find out it's not.
And lastly, I want to hear from both of you on this. What, I guess, is a takeaway that drivers right now should know about? Doug, I'll start with you.
Well, that's first and foremost that we're there fighting for small business truckers. One thing I do want to bring up that was brought up at this conference, and it was kind of telling that the administrator wasn't there because Texas has been very critical of FMCSA, and they're dealing with cross-border trucks and non-domiciled drivers, meaning drivers from other countries. Texas had to pass a bill, HB 4337, to enforce an influx of things of Mexican licensed drivers who were illegally driving in their state, as well as cabotage. I mean, cabotage is a big issue. It's not being enforced by anybody, and it cannot be enforced by local law enforcement because it's a violation that Customs and Border Patrol or Immigration Customs enforces. Also, we heard from someone from the Motor Vehicle Unit, AMVA, that there's high-quality fake CDLs out there. So high quality that when an officer scans it, it pops up in all the fields that should pop up. But the only way that you would know it was fictitious is it actually ran the license. So these are things that are of high concern to everyone in the industry, including law enforcement and the trucking industry as a whole. But a lot of these drivers are being employed by large carriers, and they're not doing their due diligence and not running MVRs to see if these people have actual, legitimate licenses or are allowed to, take the business period in the United States, drive with the United States. I mean, you're having people with foreign licenses drive from point to point within the United States, which is against the law.
All right, Louis.
I think the good thing that was brought up in there was taken away from some of the committees I was on was that roadside and enforcement is realizing that there's a huge problem in brokers and this broker fraud and carrier fraud. So they're trying to come up with some ways to maybe help conquer this somewhat on the roadside. So at least somebody is. As we all know, FMCSA and everybody just seems to be sitting on their hands with this information. And in fact, we haven't had a meeting yet, but I volunteered and I'm on an ad hoc committee to help assist with trying to come up with ways that roadside can help fight against broker fraud and carrier fraud.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Louis Pugh and Doug Morris talking about CVSA's Policy and Regulatory Affairs Committee meeting. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. That's our show for today. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to join us again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit ooida.com.